Alright guys and girls, we were talking yesterday about the sense of smell, right? We were talking about the five senses and the sense of smell. And we started on that a little bit. We didn't get finished with it. That's okay, because I want to go through that for just a few more minutes and kind of go through it again, just to make sure we got it and we kind of got it figured out, okay? The sense of smell, remember that the olfactory bulbs, which we saw with the brain last week, are where we pick up the sense of smell. Okay, they are actually chemoreceptors. In other words, they pick up chemical signals. And again, we've already kind of mentioned this. When you breathe in air, you're breathing in chemicals. That's what you're smelling. Okay, so they're chemoreceptors. And again, they do operate with the sense of taste. That's why if you've ever had a sinus cold or something, you can't breathe through your nose and it's all stopped up. Food just doesn't taste as good because you don't have that extra added kick in of your nose telling you what smells good and what doesn't as well. Okay, so they do work together, and they both are chemoreceptors, so that's why they would kind of work together anyway. Now, we said that the olfactory organs contain the receptors, and they have epithelial cells surrounding them as well. You know, remember epithelium? They're super straightforward. They don't have any extra stuff on it. However, there are some receptors up there, and you're going to see what I'm talking about because I'm going to show you the picture in just a second. Okay, and then the upper nasal cavity, when you go up here at the very top, that's where they're located. Now, they're bipolar, don't, okay, but they do have these little hairs, these little cilia, hanging down into the underside of your nose, of your nasal cavity up there, okay? And they have to be, again, there so that they can collect those chemicals, okay? So they actually have to be down into the nasal cavity to pick up those chemicals. Okay? Now they're super small, so you can't really see them that well. Again, you have to have mucus to keep the nasal cavity moist, and also allow for those chemicals to absorb so that the chemoreceptors can pick them up, because if they can't be absorbed, you can't pick them up. Okay? So this is what, again, I'm talking about. Here is your nasal cavity. You can see your in front of your nose going up, and at the very top, right here on something called the cribriform plate, which separates your nasal cavity from your brain, you have up here the olfactory bulb, and you have the area where all the nasal nerves that are going to sit. But you can see the same thing here. Here is the olfactory bulb with all the nerves, and again, this leads to the olfactory nerve. Come down through the bone, you see there's the epithelium, but here and here and here, see all these little yellow ones they got colored? Those are receptor cells. The rest of these orangish, brown looking ones are just plain epithelial cells. Again, simple, straightforward epithelium. Okay? Now, you see on each tip, they got these cilia, and these cilia are there to pick up chemicals that touch them. And again, you got to have that little layer of moist mucus so that the chemicals can dissolve, go up in here and touch, and then hopefully send a signal to your olfactory bulb and your brain telling you what you're smelling. Okay? Now, as far as what stimulates it, so this is something new. There's a couple things that we talk about when we're talking about stimulation. How does it actually work? How do you, when you smell, and you smell something that to you smells good, but to somebody else it may smell bad, right? Again, they think that each odor has a specific set of proteins that it's acting on, okay? Specific receptors. But again, we're not completely 100% sure how you detect what you detect as far as this smells good. You know, we all probably smell the same thing. We're all smelling the same chemicals, but why does it, some people smell good and other people it doesn't smell good, right? You know, it's like certain types of flowers. Some people like the smell of flowers, some people don't. Or certain types of foods. Like we mentioned yesterday, coffee smells good, but when it comes to taste, it may not. Or some people think that coffee smells really nasty smelling. Again, same deal. And again, the brain will interpret each code. That's why, again, you smell things that you like to smell, and other people have things that they like to smell, and sometimes they don't mix. Some people are like, ooh, that stinks, or ooh, that smells good. Because the brain, remember we talked about what actually does the smelling? It's your brain interpreting what those chemicals are to to tell it whether it is a good odor or a bad odor, okay? And again, this is the thing. Just like we mentioned, people who live in places like Childersburg, where they have the paper mill. That odor, for us, we go, whew, strong sulfur dioxide odor, right? They are like, we don't smell it anymore because the nose will adapt quickly. It'll be like, no big whoop. It's there, it's not causing a problem. I'm just going to basically ignore it after a while. So the sense of smell does that. And you know that because, you know, when you put cologne or aftershave or perfume on, put it on there, you get that sudden whiff of it for a little while. But after a while, you don't even smell it yourself, do you? And other people around you come in contact with you, they can smell it, but you're like kind of immune to it. You don't notice it anymore. The only way you notice it if you squirted some more on you, and it was a sudden bigger change in the amount of stuff, then your brain would go like, oh, there's that smell again. Okay? But again, that's a real quick thing. It's not very long, but that's the sense of smell, right? Okay. Now, make sure when you color your color diagram on the sense of smell, okay? Be very careful. Look in that textbook. Remember, the textbook has a picture of it. Look in there. Again, if you have a question, come by and see me about it, okay? But don't get confused on those things too often much, all right? Okay.